Matthew Hussey is a world-renowned dating coach, relationship expert, and also a motivational speaker in many ways. He's also an idol. He's someone that I've based my own work on. And today, he's sharing some of his deepest, most EQ-fueled relationship dope on the Ranveer Show. If you're someone who wants to learn about yourself in a deeper way, if you want to increase your EQ, if you want to learn more about relationship psychology, this is the episode for you. Enjoy this episode of the Ranveer Show with Matthew Hussey. Opened up a lot more than I ever thought I would, but that's the effect of this man's beautiful mind. Enjoy Matthew Hussey on the Ranveer Show. Matthew Hussey, welcome to the Ranveer Show, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here with you.
I don't know how much you know that your content has spread out into the world. So for my listeners who aren't too familiar with your content as of now, and I'm sure they will be after this podcast, you're probably the premier dating coach on social media and one of the premier dating coaches in the world. But for me, because I've consumed your content for so long, I also feel you give the right kind of motivation that the internet needs, that the world needs. And honestly, I love thinking about what people will be doing 10, 20 years from now. And I keep seeing you build into that, in that whole self-help space. And I feel dating is only the start. This particular episode is going to be about love, romance, and dating. Welcome to the Ranveer Show.
What a lovely and gracious introduction. Thank you. Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time now. And as you've correctly assessed, it keeps building and evolving. You can't talk about people's love lives without talking about everything else too, because the things that create demons in our love lives, they're often created from other parts of our lives. And of course, when something's wrong in our love lives, it infects the other parts of our lives too. So, at this stage in my career, whilst I've spent a lot of years helping people with that kind of classic how-to element of dating and relationships, it's evolved to be a little more nuanced than that. And I think a lot of the work that I do now is about the issues that our love lives bring to the surface. Our love lives are a way in to the things that we need to work on in our whole lives.
Yeah, because you know how they say that EQ is the future. It used to be IQ, your intelligence quotient, but now it's EQ, your emotional quotient, because that gets used in leadership. It gets used in any sort of growth, any sort of career, any sort of situation, whether it's family life or dating. And I think you're basically an EQ coach in many ways. You teach people how to understand other human beings and how to understand themselves better.
That's a lovely compliment. I like that. I like that. I think that there's, I think we grow up thinking that a lot of people grow up thinking they have a lot of EQ. And sometimes when we're younger, we can have like a kind of raw empathy or kindness about us. And those are great foundations for any human being. But I think that life teaches us a different kind of EQ. When we have problems in relationships, when we have problems at work, when life knocks us down in ways that we never thought it would, and we make mistakes that we never thought we would. We make the mistakes that we think are the mistakes of other people, but then we find ourselves making them. To me, all of that breeds a different level of EQ. It breeds a different kind of empathy because we start to relate to more of the world because we've been through more. So I think some EQ can come with age, and other types of EQ I think can come from being around amazing people who you realize have interesting ways of looking at life. And as with you, one of the great privileges of my life has been being able to spend time with people who have led really interesting lives and understanding the way they think, because sometimes and often they are years ahead of me in the realizations that they've had.
Lovely. How did you learn all this? Because when I see your videos, when I see the pieces you put out, I say to myself, I wish Matthew had been around when I was 17. I wish he had been around when I was 22. I wish I'd seen this particular video 2 years ago. I feel bad I found you later on in life. But how did you actually learn all these things about relationships, about psychology, about just giving people the answers that they need to hear?
Well, I think, there are videos that I've put out that I will need a year from now or 5 years from now. There are videos that I've done that the future me is going to need to remember. So I think that we can have that feeling that, I wish I had this then. But the truth is, there are many moments in our lives where we're going to forget what we know or what we once read or what we once learned, or something so difficult is going to happen in our lives that it's going to divorce us from that wisdom. And that's the time when we're really going to need it. How do I know what I know? Look, I think it's a combination of experience at this stage. But when I started out, it wasn't experience. It was a combination of passion for the subject. And I suppose, there's that scene in, I don't know if you remember the Good Will Hunting, the movie, but there's this great scene where his girlfriend asks him, he can basically diagnose the problems in her coursework at university quicker than she can. And he's not even on her program. And she's like, how do you do that? And he's like, how some people, the first time they play the piano, they're already further than everybody else. This just happens to be my piano. And I feel a little bit like that when it comes to the dissection and the delivery of ideas. It's something that I am naturally good at. And so when I took to it, it wasn't an ability, I would say, that was earned. There was a certain sense in which I could read a book or watch something. I paid close attention in life. I was good at paying attention. Like, oh, let me watch this situation over here. What's really going on? What's really happening in this moment? And I was able to glean truths and patterns from that. And then I was good at talking about them. I really, everyone always asks me what is it you do? And and yes, I've become known as someone who helps people in their love lives. But the truth is, what I really love more than anything is just taking an idea that I think could help people and dissecting it and delivering it in a memorable way. And I've refined that over time, but that skill set has never changed.
And I mean, I'm sure you get this question a lot. Are you single right now? Are you dating someone?
No, I'm dating, right? I'm with someone right now. Yeah, I'm in a relationship.
Beautiful. Okay, speak to me about breakups, specifically the worst breakup you ever had and how it changed you. Mine happened a couple of years ago and it's drastically changed my whole life. You know what? I'm going to use this podcast selfishly to get some therapy from you. Like, I mean, we're not professionals here, but I'd love to get some advice.
That's the great beauty of being able to have these conversations, is that we get to ask the questions we want to ask. And also it's going to be, that's helpful to everybody else because we're all the same. We all go through these things. If you're going through something or if I'm going through something, then the audience is too. I had a tough breakup. I've had a couple of tough breakups in my life. But I have, a particular heartbreak that was very, very difficult. And, the thing about heartbreak is it feels like dying. It feels like there's a part of you that's dying, and in a way there is a part of you that's dying, but a bigger version comes back from the dead. And there are things we can do to heal better in a breakup, but there are certain things that we can't shortcut. The pain of it, the grieving that can happen is something that, if we're truly heartbroken, there are some people who will say, I've been heartbroken, but from the way they talk about it, they haven't been like truly knocked on their ass heartbroken, where they can't function, you know, like you're a zombie going through your day. And that's a particular kind of heartbreak that, you know, when you're in it, you know it. Oh, this is it. This is the thing that people talk about when they talk about heartbreak. There's no mistaking it. And it's a process. There is no shortcut in the sense that we have to go through that pain. But I do think that the meaning that we give to the breakup is extremely important and can either prolong the pain way past its end date, or its what should be its end date, and can make it much more traumatic than it needs to be. Because heartbreak doesn't need to mean regret. You know, often when a heartbreak happens, and usually we're heartbroken because we didn't choose the end of the relationship. Although it's should also be said, there is a kind of heartbreak that comes even from ending a relationship that you don't want to be in anymore. You can still feel heartbreak, but it's a different kind. But when we go through heartbreak, if we say to ourselves, that was the person I was supposed to be with, and now it's over, they left me, that will create a kind of pain that you don't need to experience. Because my belief is that someone cannot be the person for you if they've decided not to be with you. By definition, they're not your person. It wasn't the relationship you were supposed to be in. It can't be. If it's the relationship you're supposed to be in, then that's the relationship that will continue. If it doesn't continue, that's not the relationship you were supposed to continue with. So once we understand that, we can feel incredible grieving and heartbreak because the relationship is now over, but we don't have to grieve the loss of the love of our life, because they weren't the love of our life that we were supposed to be with for our life. What we then do is we put pain in its proper place. This hurts because it's over. It hurts because there is something that I'm going to miss, but I haven't lost something that was meant for me. I'm curious to hear about your situation and what were some of the emotions that you felt, and what was the hardest part for you?
I think it's pretty much what you said. I felt like it was the person I was supposed to be with forever. Have you seen the movie Up?
Yes.
You know, it's the Pixar movie. She was that person for me, where I visualized an old age together. I visualized slow dancing as old people together. And then cheating happened and it hit me like a truck because I didn't see it coming at all. And I don't think she saw it coming either. It was kind of like we were going through a sort of rocky phase, which we had tackled previously. And then cheating happened very, very randomly. And I was at a very vulnerable stage in my career as well. So I really needed the support, but I got anti-support almost. But it really kind of stripped me down to my most vulnerable self. And I've not been able to recover completely since then also. It's been a while. It's been way longer than I thought I'd take to recover. There are phases where I blame myself for not recovering as fast as I should have recovered. I've made content about it. I've made videos about it. I've even taken a few therapy sessions.
Yeah.
But just honestly, nothing's helping. I don't know why. Like even now, very often if I'm sleeping at night, I will think of, I'll play out the whole cheating scenario in my head. As guys, we tend to visualize our partners a lot because men are wired visually. So I tend to visualize all the stuff that will end up hurting me, but I still consciously do it. I don't know why. And it's happening to the extent where I'm thinking of moving out of my current home just because it probably holds a lot of memories. So yeah, and I've never said all this on the internet. I don't mind saying it to you. I was probably waiting for my podcast with Matthew Hussey.
I'm really happy that you're sharing that because, well, firstly, Ranveer, listen, I speak to a lot of people, and I speak to a lot of people who are in your position where they have an audience, a big audience, where they have a lot of expectation of them. People have an idea of who you are and how capable you are and how strong you are and how successful you are. And it's very rare for me to encounter somebody who is as vulnerable as you just were. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, because that will help so many people forget whether I give a solution or not. Just to hear that from you is a really beautiful thing for people, especially a lot of men, because men and women, but a lot of men feel like they can't say those things, and they feel they cannot be vulnerable in those ways. And hearing it from you is really beautiful. That's such a normal, natural thing. And I think that we have this because what happens in a breakup, and a friend of mine, Guy Winch, who is the kind of foremost breakup therapist in the world, he helps a tremendous amount of people go through their breakups, and he will say that one of the real problems of a breakup is that we go into work and we talk to our colleague or our boss, and we say, like, I've just had a breakup in the last couple of days, and the first conversation they have with us is very sympathetic. And the same is true of our friends, our family. That first conversation they have with us, they're like, oh my God, if you need to take the day today, take a day, go relax, get a massage, do something to be kind to yourself. But what's kind of funny about it is it's like the idea of taking a day is absurd in the context of a breakup and heartbreak, because this is something that's going to play out for some time. And one of the insecurities we have during a breakup is that I can't go and say to that same friend, that same colleague, that same person for the 5th time in 2 weeks, when they ask me how you doing, I can't keep saying miserably. I am miserable. We feel like at a certain point socially, we have to start lying about how we feel, because otherwise we'll look like we're indulgent. We'll look like we're just not moving on. We'll get bored. People will get bored of us. We'll get on people's nerves. And so we start to hold back, but it doesn't mean that those feelings aren't there. But because we don't hear it from other people, and we don't hear the kind of vulnerability you just shared, what that means is we can feel something a year, 2 years or more on from that breakup. We get a thought about that person. And what will happen is we'll think there's something wrong with us, because we're like, well, no one else endures this for this long. No one else is still thinking about that person. That person seems to have moved on just fine. And here I am, it's 1 a.m. I'm laying in bed in the dark, and thoughts of this person are coming into my mind and creating this, that same feeling of heartbreak or anxiety or sadness, and is stopping me from being able to sleep. How is this still interrupting my sleep 2 years on? I think that life is very, very, life is not black and white. We can get over someone to the extent that the pain of the breakup is no longer in the foreground. It's no longer the main event, because in the beginning of a heartbreak, it's the main event in our lives. And that means that it's hard to even go into work and just get through the day is hard. And it's on our mind every second of the day. We're grateful if 5 minutes go by and we don't think about it. But over time, it starts to fade to the background, which people, I think, sometimes get confused, because they're like, wait, but why am I still feeling this pain? But what's worth recognizing as a form of progress is when the pain is no longer in the foreground, it's the background. So it's still there in some way. You're still able to access it in certain moments, but it's not the main event. That's huge progress. And you should commend yourself for that. And when you find yourself, that we all do this. That judgment that you place on yourself for why am I still thinking about this? There must be something I'm not doing well enough, and listen, I've had the same things in my mind. I know there's a lot of expectation on me, and I wish there wasn't, but it's also my fault that there is, right? If you're me and you're out there giving advice for 14 years, then there's going to be expectation on you. But, I'm just a person, and I wish I could live up to all of my advice, but I can't. My advice is like a compass for me, just like it is for anybody else. I do my best to live up to it, but I frequently fall short of it. And that moment where that moment where we feel that pain, it's even worse if you feel like, especially with you, where you feel like this week I've got to go and make a video, and that like I got to go and like be that energy in people's day. That's a really challenging thing to have to do. And in a way, it's good and bad, I'm sure you will recognize, because it's bad in the sense that it sometimes doesn't always give you space to feel what you're feeling. And it's good in the sense that sometimes going and helping other people is a great antidote to feeling that. The key thing that I try to tell people is that sometimes when we get a feeling about something, we're very good at equating that feeling with some kind of truth. If I really miss someone, that must mean that they're right for me. If this really hurts, that must mean I wasn't supposed to lose that person. If I imagine that person cheating on me with somebody else and it hurts and it makes me feel like I wasn't good enough, that must mean I'm not good enough. And that's the dangerous part, is that I always say, after a breakup, just because it hurts, it doesn't mean that that person was right for you. So even 2 years on, when we feel something, we can look at those feelings and go, because I know in my breakup, there are moments where it comes into my mind and I feel like I go back to being a heartbroken teenager. I sense that teenager, and I don't mean this in the derogatory sense. I mean this in the sense like there's an adolescent part of me that's so hopeful and romantic, and so, the idea of finding love, the idea of like that, that part of me always exists. And that's almost the part of us that got hurt, isn't it? Because it's like, you threw yourself in, you let your guard down, you opened yourself up to loving someone, you imagined a future with them, and then that got smashed. And there's like a wounded part of you, the child in you, that still can hurt when he thinks about that. And I think, by the way, that's kind of beautiful.
That's a beautiful perspective on things, man. And, it kind of reminds me of the people and the kind of couples who really speak about the beauty of long-term relationships, marriage, serious boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. What do you think of that concept of marriage in general? Because we're seeing divorce rates go up all over the world. So why are they going up according to you? You're a dating coach, so I'm sure you've helped a lot of people like that. What goes wrong primarily in 2021? And what do you think of the concept of marriage in general as a man? Is it something that intrigues you? Because it's something that is one of my life's goals. Like, I want a stable partner. I want to raise a family. I believe that there's a lot of personal evolution that happens through giving, through growing together, but also why are divorces happening?
If you'd have asked me a few years ago, I was a bit of a contrarian on marriage. I it's not that I wasn't romantic about the idea of marriage, but I didn't love the idea that it was someone else's job to confirm my relationship with somebody else and to, put it on a piece of paper and then have it, have the law involved in my relationship. I didn't like that idea. I thought, if two people really love each other, they don't need a piece of paper to prove it. I have evolved on that point since then. I don't take a position on whether people should get married or not. I think both can work, and I think people should do what's right for them. But I do understand when people say, we were together for a long time, we really loved each other, and when we did get married, something felt a little different. In a good way. It felt like we had made a different kind of promise to each other. And the act of doing that, I know for a lot of people I know, it did galvanize that commitment for them. It did make them feel like they were even more of a team than before. And I think there's something to be said for that. And I understand the arguments that something that is a little harder to unwind than a simple relationship outside of marriage. Not that any long-term relationship is easy to unwind, but something that has more barriers to unwinding and disentangling can be a good thing if it makes you think twice about bailing at the first sign of trouble. If it makes you feel like, what, we signed up for something serious. It's a serious thing to get out of it. So maybe we shouldn't throw in the towel too quickly. Maybe we should actually work on this. I think there is something to be said for that. I understand that argument. So, I get it. I think I think what people have to really do is assess, obviously sometimes people can have that as a goal to the point of obsession, and then they forget what the real goal is. The real goal is to have for the people who are talking about it, the real goal is usually to have a deeply committed relationship with their ultimate teammate. And marriage is a symbol of that. So I think that it's worth always reminding ourselves of that what we're really looking for is that teammate, and marriage is going to be hopefully an organic progression of that love and that commitment. But I also think that there are people who think of marriage from an egoic point of view. And by that, I mean, society expects it of them. That's what they believe. Their parents or their grandma or their friends who are married expect it of them. And so now it's no longer coming from a place of this is an organic progression of a love and a relationship that I've found, but is something that I feel if I don't do, I won't be worthy. I won't be living up to some expectation that's had of me in my life. And I think that's the dangerous part, because marriage born out of genuine love and teamwork becomes a really beautiful commitment. Marriage that occurs because of a fear-based mindset that I won't be enough unless I do it leads to some very bad decisions. And we see those happening all over the world. And if you look at the last couple of years, I think that there will be an awful lot of marriages that have ended because, a lot of people wouldn't perhaps have been that level of team in the first place. And what the last year, especially of the pandemic, did is it exposed the fact that they actually weren't capable of being that kind of a team when the chips were down, that the relationship worked because of distraction. It worked because they were always occupied with other things. Well, when the other things got taken away, suddenly they were faced with each other. and what they really had. Now, the one caveat I'll add to that, because I think it would be irresponsible of me not to, is that there will be a lot of people who this was an unnatural situation for a lot of relationships as well. And I think that there will also have been some good relationships that ended because people were forced together in an unnatural way that human beings are not designed to be forced together in. We're not, it's not like a blissful idea of a relationship is two people being stuck in a home together for the better part of a year. We wouldn't, if we were advising people on what's a healthy relationship, you wouldn't say that was it. You would say, maintain close relationships with your friends, spend time with people other than your partner so that you guys have some balance, lose yourself in some projects and passions that you really enjoy. As Esther Perel says, have your own secret garden, right? A place that you can go to be you and to do things that you love, that's just yours. And there were an enormous number of people who didn't have access to any of those things. They didn't have access to their friends in person, maybe in the house through Zoom, but that's not the same as getting out of the house and getting the chance to miss. Even when we go to work for a day, we get to miss our partner for a day. We get to actually experience missing them, and we come home and we're happy to see them again.
I also want to echo another thing Esther Perel says. She says that this whole period fast-forwarded relationships. So if you were meant to get closer, you got closer. If you were meant to break up anyway, you broke up. But I love the perspective you brought, that there could be a third possibility.
Yes, but the one thing I would say about that idea of it fast-forward relationships is that fast-forwarding a relationship isn't always a great idea, even if it's positive. Because there are certain things about a relationship we can only know by going through experiences with someone, good and bad. Now, you could argue that, well, they went through the ultimate bad experience together, so that if they can survive that, then they can survive anything. But I don't think that's entirely true, because for a lot of people who met at the beginning of the pandemic, it fast forwarded something. But even the scary, traumatic nature of the pandemic, there's something novel about it. When you met someone new and you met under those conditions, there's something exciting about it. And oh my God, we would never normally live together this quickly, but shall we? Like, it gave you an excuse to have this crazy, romantic, passionate time in the honeymoon phase of your relationship. But that's not the same as the things that you learn in 6 months or in a year or in 2 years, that you can only know, how does someone react when you're not healthy, when you are going through something? How does someone react when there's financial difficulty? How does someone react when they need to make a real compromise for you, or vice versa? How does someone react when things are difficult? These are things that we know over time. Character is something that's revealed over time.
Take it slow, man. I think that's the key message here. Maybe it wasn't the key message in the 70s or 60s, but it's become the key message in the social media age. I think we'll move to our final section because we've got a flood of questions from our Twitterverse. So let's take on some fan questions. Ruchi Chawla asks, your partner can always be emotionally dependent on you, but there should be limits put on emotional dependence. So how do you figure out those limits? And what do you think about emotional dependence in general?
Well, a romantic relationship, by definition, is not one where there is unconditional love. We have to go into a romance, even though we may say, I would do anything for you. The truth is, it's always, I would do anything for you as long as I feel like you're also, you have similar feelings about me. Sometimes I think it's sometimes too much to ask that two people feel exactly the same way, because it's, David White a poet, and a British poet. He says unrequited love is actually the norm. It's not the exception. And by that, he means throughout our relationship, we're always going to go through times where our partner feels something more intensely than we do, or vice versa. Times when we're willing to do things for them that they may not be willing to do for us. That's real life. But relationships truly break down and become untenable when the difference between the two versions of love that two people are giving are really, really vast. The reason I say that is because your listener question, I look at that and say, okay, let's remove the word emotional dependence from it and say that we have emotional requirements in a relationship in order to stay there. Emotionally dependent suggests that we wouldn't survive emotionally without them in our lives. And that can never be true. You always have to know that if I had to leave this relationship, I could, and I would emotionally survive outside of this relationship. Because if you don't know that, then that relationship always has a gun to your head. You will never leave, even if things get so bad and abusive that you should leave. So emotional dependence, no, but emotional requirements, yes. And the emotional requirement is, what are the basic fundamental things that I need from you in order for me to continue to invest emotionally in this relationship, and physically and time-wise? And it might be, okay, I have an emotional, it should start from a point of view of saying, who do I want to be in this world? How strong do I want to be? How independent do I want to be? And what do I expect of myself? Because if we don't do that, then we could say, we could go to our partner for reassurance that we're good enough 30 times a day, which is an unfair thing to do to our partner, because we have to think of our partner's existence in this relationship, and it would make it a really unenjoyable existence for your partner if all they're doing all day is reassuring you that you're good enough. So there we have to say, it's my responsibility to make myself feel good enough most of the time, or at least even a lot of the time. Or even if I'm not feeling good enough, to resolve to do the work that I need to do without always bringing that as baggage to my partner. Because there's a big difference between vulnerability and dumping. Vulnerability is me saying, I felt a little jealous this morning when you spoke about this person, and I don't want to feel that, but I did. And then our partner can, because we've brought it up not in an accusatory way, not in a judgmental way, but we brought it up in a vulnerable way, our partner can come to our aid and make us feel better, and it can actually bring us closer. But if 20 minutes later we say it again, and then an hour later we say it again, and then an hour later we say it again, and then this afternoon we pick a big fight over it, and then 5 days from now we bring it up again, and now we're not, this isn't vulnerability, this is dumping, because I'm not taking responsibility for resolving these feelings in myself. I'm just expecting you to keep patching up the wound over and over again without me doing the work. So there's a difference between vulnerability and dumping. And that's something we should explain to our partner. If we sense that they're becoming emotionally dependent on us, we can say to them, I know you have things that you're struggling with, anxieties, things that you find hard. That's okay. That I'm okay with. Like I love you and I accept your flaws, because I have them too. And my God, I hope that you are compassionate about mine. So we have to be that for each other. But part of that compassion is, I want you to be able to bring things to me, but I want you to be able to bring them in a productive way that also recognizes that whilst your energy is important to you, I hope that my energy is important to you as well. And if you continuously bring these things up after we've already talked about it and we've had a great conversation about it and I've made you feel better, if it then becomes this conversation we have every 5 minutes, then I feel like you're not being compassionate about my energy. And you're not also doing the things that will help you feel better. I want to help you do those. I support you. You know, whatever we need to do to make you feel stronger, I support you. But if it's you continuously saying something to me without us doing those things that actually make you stronger, then I feel like it's not good for our relationship. And I know that what we want is to build an amazing relationship. So I think that making that distinction is important. Emotional dependence versus emotional requirements. And by the way, the converse of that is if someone can't meet our most basic emotional requirements, if they don't make us feel loved, if they never make us feel special in the relationship, if they never show up and give us their affection, and it always, the relationship is falling short of what we need, not on our worst day, but even on our average day, what we need, then that person isn't meeting our emotional requirements. And then we have to start having a real conversation about that.
I was going to ask you a question about being possessive because we have a lot of possessiveness related questions in this segment, but I think you kind of answered that. Either way, I'm still going to take one of those. The nostalgic Aki asks, how do you balance care and being possessive? Like, how do you balance being caring and being possessive? And I think this is like a very tropical culture perspective. Can't generalize, but I've seen this across tropical cultures. Latin America, India, parts of Africa. The guys do tend to get, I mean, both men and women get very possessive. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, caring and possessive are diametrically opposed words.
Yeah.
Because if what we say, when someone says caring, that's a euphemism. They're being polite to themselves. They're saying, I just care so much. That has nothing to do with loving the other person. That has to do with not wanting to lose something you're getting. True caring is caring about the experience of the other person. Yep. If I really love them, then I care about the experience of life that they're having. That doesn't mean I can never get jealous. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have possessive moments, but it means that our relationship and my love for them has to be paramount, as long as what they do doesn't fundamentally cross a line that we've agreed on, you know. But possessiveness, so much of possessiveness is about control. When we, quote, care so much, which is another way of saying I am so afraid because I have something I don't want to lose, our most controlling nature comes out. Because when we have something we don't want to lose, we want to hold on as tightly as possible to that thing. Now, we have the illusion that by holding on tightly, we're going to keep it. And what we all know is, again, like an animal can love you, but hold on too tightly and that animal starts to like, wait, hang on, I need to be able to move. I need to be able to run to the other side of the room if I need to. Holding on tightly doesn't work. And it also, you can never exert that level of control because there's always going to be a party that they go to that you're not going to go to that night. There's always going to be a trip that they do with their friends that you didn't go to that time. You can't play surveillance on every part of a person's life. You can only let go. And I think that this is where it's worth becoming a little bit fatalistic and saying, I am going to allow for, like, if this is going to happen, I'm going to be a little bit fatalistic and say, it's going to happen if it's going to happen. And I am going to make my peace with the fact that I'll be able to deal with it if it does. Don't worry about controlling them. Worry about being strong enough to handle any situation where someone actually is disloyal, where someone actually does betray you, cheat on you, do something. If you know that you're strong enough that you can walk away if it happens, then you don't need to control it. It's not necessary, because you don't need to worry that, yeah, but they're so great, I don't want them to do this. If they do it, then they may not be so great.
Yeah,
You may decide the vision I have of this person isn't true anyway. So what did I really lose? And so therefore, I don't need to worry about losing the right person, because the right person may not do it to me in the first place. Or even if there are some relationships that get through things like that, but even then, you holding on wasn't stopping them from doing that. So all you can do is show up in the moments that you're in the relationship and be the best you can be. That's it. And being the best you can be includes giving that person space to be who they are and taking the risk that who they are in that moment may actually be something that hurts the relationship, or it won't be. And if it isn't something that hurts the relationship, then what you now have is an even more beautiful relationship as a result, because you've got a person who realizes that you love them enough to let go and to trust in what you believe you have together.
Again, this is coming from the whole self-improvement content creator space, but my mathematical definition of a possessive nature is one of two things: childhood experiences or adult insecurity. Like, when you're not feeling like you're good enough on a very deep level. Again, that boils down to some kind of childhood experience or a pre-adult experience.
Yes. And that not feeling good enough is a poisonous thing, because it makes us fear everyone in the room all the time. We could be with our partner and someone walks into a coffee shop. Someone said to me the other day, I used to, if I was with my boyfriend and someone I thought was beautiful would walk into the room, I would have a meltdown internally. Like my day would be ruined, because I'd literally, all I'd be thinking is, he wants her, not me. And so sometimes it's not even about someone being disloyal. It's literally just about perceiving constant threats to this thing that you care about. And it's worth noting that the threats are going to be there no matter what. Like, they're just always going to be there. I live in Los Angeles. The threat of an earthquake is always imminent. We just a week or two ago, we woke up in the middle of the night to an earthquake at 4:00 in the morning. Like, it's always a possibility, but you don't live your life every minute of the day. I'm not sitting here with you holding onto the table, worrying about an earthquake. Me holding onto the table doesn't help. It's not going to make the earthquake less likely. Right? Yeah. All it means is I'm ruining my experience of everything that's happening in my day because of the possibility of the earthquake. It's not about saying to people it won't happen. Someone could betray you. Someone could cheat on you. Someone could leave you for somebody else. All of those things could happen. But it doesn't make it any less likely that they'll happen because you're holding on and gripping. It doesn't make it less likely that it will happen. But what it makes guaranteed is that you won't be able to enjoy anything that's happening. And by the way, you can also console yourself with the idea that you can take solace in knowing that there isn't one person in the world who doesn't have the same threats. No one. We personalize these threats. That's ego. Our ego says, I'm not good enough. That person who just walked into the room is more beautiful than me. My partner could leave me for that person. That partner could go off with that person. That's all true. They could leave you for that person. What's the part that's insidious is that we personalize that threat. We make that threat about us, when the truth is every single person in the world who is brave enough to be in love and to have a relationship has the exact same threats at their doorstep as you do. And we see that every single day. There are people that are, we think of objectively as the most successful and attractive people on earth, and they get cheated on. And, there will be people looking at you, Ranveer, and they're like, who would ever cheat on Ranveer? There will be people that say that, like, look at him. Good looking, he's successful, he's got emotional intelligence, he's got a lovely way about him, he's good with people. Like, who in their right mind would do that? But the truth is, these things can happen to anybody. So it's not about saying there is no threat. It's about saying, hey, that threat you face, you're in great company, because the rest of us face it too. Why don't we all relax and just let what's going to happen happen?
Yeah, I hear you. And I'd probably like to add one more thing here. Let's go back to that example of a couple sitting in a restaurant where you said that lady said that if another beautiful lady walked in, I'd get insecure. I've dated women who felt this. I feel the same way, especially when I'm in a great relationship. When you're dating someone who you love a lot, everyone in the room disappears. And at least for me, because you're that involved with that person, irrespective of how long you're dating. So you need to trust your partner that much, especially, if you guys have been together for a while, if you're getting all the right signals, tell yourself that. At least that's what's helped, a lot of people who I've given this advice to. Okay, interesting question from the Nenagram. She asks, why does one get attracted to someone who has no interest in them at all? And I think the other question I'd like to add here is that whole bad boy or bad girl attraction theory, that why you always attracted to the bad boys or the bad girls, someone who's not good for you, someone who's not right for you.
We have this idea that if someone doesn't want us, then they must be valuable. They must, especially when we don't think we're good enough, when someone likes us, we're suspicious of them. We think there must be something wrong with you if you like me, because I'm not great. So you must not be great. You can't be worth anything if you like me. Let me go and find someone who's worth something. And who do I think is worth something? The person who doesn't notice me, the person who doesn't want me, because I don't think very highly of myself. So if you don't notice me, you must be pretty cool. You must be onto something. So then we start chasing that, because it becomes that idea that if I could just get this person, I would be enough. That would prove that I could be enough. This person's validation becomes the key that unlocks my confidence, which of course is completely the reverse of what's true. That this person, if this person fell for you, it wouldn't unlock your confidence. All it would do is unlock more insecurity, more anxiety, because now you get that person and you still don't feel good enough, and you're spending every waking moment terrified you're going to lose them. So someone not liking us, someone that we really like suddenly liking us is not going to unlock our confidence. And we get attracted to the bad boy, the bad girl, partly because of what we just said, right? If we can get this person to fall in love with us, then I'll be somebody, They don't want me. They're hard to wrangle. But if I could, then I'd be good enough. And some of this stuff comes from childhood. And, there's that idea that we're trying to get closure on some story from our childhood. I didn't get it from my dad. So if I can get it from this person, then it will show that I was good enough for my dad, that I could have had my dad's love. I'm completing a story that never got completed in my mind. We're still allowing some person in our past to play God over our current decisions and trying to give ourselves a sense of finality over that. But of course, that's when we do that, we forget that those people that we're trying to still win the approval of, they were very flawed human beings, and that they're not God. They were just people. They were just people, in the same way that this person who's not showing interest in you right now, or this person who's the bad boy picking you up, putting you down, you know, whatever, that's not an indication of value. What it is an indication of this person either just isn't that into you, or this person isn't looking for something serious right now, or this person is not ready to love the way that a true relationship really demands love, or this person is insecure and needs to have 5 people on the go at all times because they're trying to fill a hole that they can't fill. So we're basing our value on a phase of life or inadequacy or insecurity or ego that somebody else is in. The irony is that we could have someone who really likes us today and is ready to treat us well and ready to give us a ton of love, who was the bad boy 5 years ago, but has evolved and matured and is now ready to really love. But that person's ready to give us a kind of unironic, unsarcastic, pure love. And we go, something's wrong with this. Let me go for this. Let me go for the bad boy. So you start to look for someone who's currently in a bad boy phase. So what happens then is you end up cycling through people your whole life who are always in a certain phase of their life because you're not ready for someone to treat you really well. Even if one, you know, you're like, oh, but I really like someone with an edge. Well, maybe that person was that person, but they've grown up. And so what it really is not that, you know, it's that you're always attracted to people who have not grown up. You don't see the people, you don't acknowledge the people that have grown up, who are past that phase. You're not ready for something more than what you're getting right now. And as soon as you do see something that could resemble good treatment, you don't treat it as valuable because you don't treat yourself as valuable. You're still trying to complete some story you have in your mind of what you're supposed to get and how it's supposed to make you feel.
Matthew Hussey, spreading those positive vibes, spreading all that healing all over the world. While I have a ton of questions to ask you, I think for this episode, we'll call it a day. I appreciate everything you've done on this episode, brother. Right from giving me advice from my personal life to just putting out pearls of wisdom out there for the audiences. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, both as the podcast host and someone who consumes your content regularly. You have no idea what you're doing through your work, man. So God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. I'd love to do it again. I genuinely, you know, I don't say that to everybody. I really have enjoyed this one. And by the way, for anyone out there, I put together a little video for you guys that if you want to keep building your confidence, and you've realized from listening to this conversation between Ranveer and I, that's the deeper confidence is something you need to work on. I have a speech that I gave that was behind closed doors. It was only a couple of hundred people in the speech, but I never gave it again. And it's a training on confidence and what I call the 3 layers of confidence. If you go, I've actually created a special place for you guys to get it as listeners of your podcast, Ranveer. If you go to ranveerandmatthew.com, you can literally download that. That's especially for you guys. So that's at ranveerandmatthew.com. And Ranveer, I hope it's been a dream of mine to come and do an event in India for a long time. If I get to Mumbai, you and I have to go for a coffee and a catch up.
I have the same plan. At some point, I don't know how familiar you are with Aaron Marino, but I plan on flying all you guys down at some point, probably after COVID is done, and have some kind of a mass meet and greet. I don't have like a conference or something where we do the same thing that you guys do: spread positivity, spread guidance, Let's kind of work together towards a better world, man. That's why we do what we do at our core.
I love it. Thanks, Ranveer. What a pleasure.
I'll be linking all of Matthew's handles down below. I will be linking a lot of his videos that I personally love. So please go check it out. And once again, from Matthew and Ranveer, thank you guys for listening.